It's hard to imagine, but would you believe that the father of our faith actually had a relationship outside of the covenant of marriage and then wanted absolutely nothing to do with the fallout that ensued? Well, get ready for that and so much more. Welcome to a beginner's commentary to the book of Genesis, chapter 16. Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to this teaching series. If you've missed any of the videos in this series, don't worry, I got you. I created a playlist, Genesis Explained, which I placed at the end of this video so you don't miss an episode. Or you could just subscribe and turn on notifications so you are notified when we premiere the next chapter. Now let's get into chapter 16 with verses 1 and 2. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, had not borne him a child, but she had an Egyptian slave woman whose name was Hagar. So Sarai said to Abram, "See now, the Lord has prevented me from bearing children. Please have relations with my slave woman. Perhaps I will obtain children through her." And Abram listened to the voice of Sarai. So let's discuss this. Doesn't this sound familiar? Didn't Adam listen to his wife and partake of the fruit? Now, of course, men should listen to their wives, absolutely. But men need to also be discerning and lead according to what the Lord has said. Adam should have reminded Eve that the Lord said not to, just like Abram should have reminded Sarai that the Lord said a child would come from his own body, which also meant with his wife and not his wife's slave girl, because God never gave the okay for polygamy. Continuing with verses 3 through 6. And so after Abram had lived 10 years in the land of Canaan, Abram's wife Sarai took Hagar the Egyptian, her slave woman, and gave her to her husband, Abram, as his wife. Then he had relations with Hagar, and she conceived. And when Hagar became aware that she had conceived, her mistress was insignificant in her sight. So Sarai said to Abram, "May the wrong done to me be upon you. I put my slave woman into your arms, but when she saw that she had conceived, I was insignificant in her sight. May the Lord judge between you and me." But Abram said to Sarai, "Look, your slave woman is in your power. Do to her what is good in your sight." So Sarai treated her harshly, and she fled from her presence. Do you notice anything wrong with this picture? Okay, so where do we even begin? It's easy to see how wrong this is some 4,000 years on the other side of the event. So before you start getting all high and mighty, let's deconstruct this as we put ourselves there. Abram was just told that his descendants would number the stars if they could be counted, and yet he knows that he and Sarai are way beyond childbearing years, even though God reassured him that it would come from him. Have you ever let your circumstances prevent you from your God-given purpose? So why didn't Abram convince Sarai of this promise? It's as if he didn't even tell her, because she's offering up her slave girl, Hagar, which, if you recall, was given to Abram by Pharaoh when they left Egypt, which some believe was the daughter of Pharaoh. Now, doing this was perfectly normal at that time, but God had called them to be different, calling him out of that culture, and that started with monotheism, trusting in him alone, the one true God. Notice how quickly things change as soon as the slave woman Hagar discovers she has conceived. What must that have been like? Sarai unable to conceive, and then Hagar quickly conceiving, so that it became very clear it wasn't Abram with any issues. But what they don't know is that it was God preparing them for his promise. So what do we see that which was once a great idea has turned into a nightmare scenario of which Abram wants absolutely nothing to do with, as if he is saying, this was your idea, you deal with it. Continuing verses 7 through 12. Now the angel of the Lord found her by a spring of water in the wilderness, by the spring on the way to Shur. He said, Hagar, Sarai's slave woman, from where have you come and where are you going? And she said, I am fleeing from the presence of my mistress Sarai. So the angel of the Lord said to her, return to your mistress and submit to her authority. The angel of the Lord also said to her, I will greatly multiply your descendants so that they will be too many to count. The angel of the Lord said to her further, behold, you are pregnant, and you will give birth to a son, and you shall name him Ishmael, because the Lord has heard your affliction. But he will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand will be against him. And he will live in defiance of all his brothers. Okay, let's talk about all that is going on in these verses. Did you notice the question being asked by the angel of the Lord? Didn't God ask Adam a similar question in the garden after he disobeyed, sinned? Now, I'm not saying that this is God, because the text clearly tells us it's the angel of the Lord. I just wanted to point out that the question is not asking because the angel didn't know. This is more for Hagar to stop and think. Where did you come from and where are you going? As if to say, you're Sarai's maidservant, yet you are not acting like it. Maybe she was thinking too highly of herself once she became pregnant while Sarai was still barren, and we know this by what the angel of the Lord says next, by essentially saying, return and submit. Have you walked away from God? Do you need to return and submit? Now, check out these next verses where Hagar is told that her descendants will be too many to count, just like Abram's promise, and then is even told what to name the child, Ishmael. And then the prophecy of Ishmael continues. It comes. But notice the part that says, he will live in defiance of all his brothers. And who are his brothers? The seed of Abram, which will later be called Hebrews, and who are the descendants of Ishmael? Well, they are the Arab nation, and we've seen the prophecy playing out even more so now. Continuing with verses 13 through 16. Then she called the name of the Lord, who spoke to her, "You are a God who sees me." For she said, "Have I even seen him here and lived after he saw me?" Therefore, the well was called Bir Shalai Roy. Behold, it is between Kadesh and Bered. So Hagar bore a son to Abram, and Abram named his son, to whom Hagar gave birth, Ishmael. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore Ishmael to him. Okay, let's talk about this calling on the name of the Lord. Something we need to remember here is that Hagar, who is quite possibly the daughter of Pharaoh, but most definitely from a pagan nation, called the name of the Lord, saying, "You are a God who sees me," which, if you know anything about what the Egyptians worshipped, meaning they worshipped a lot of things. All you have to do is read the book of Exodus to get a list of 10 of them. Wow. Who's ready for chapter 17? Don't forget to check out michaellawsonspeaks.com for cool merch to support the channel, to support this ministry. Now may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance towards you and give you peace. I will see you here next time.